Fat American Rock Show. And Jack, what we like to have our guests who come and visit us do is their rock and roll resume. Tell us your life story, what you're doing.
Well, let's see now. I was born in New Jersey, central New Jersey, town called Broadway, in the shadow of the penitentiary. Penitentiary. The
Penitentiary, but you're right. It's about doing penance, right?
Yeah, I started playing guitar. I guess I had played music when I was a little kid. I think my parents had me take saxophone lessons. So I still had like, the things you learn as a child stay with you. So I had that music thing in my body and my soul, I suppose.
In your DNA.
In my DNA. And I remember getting bored with it at some point and just stopping. But then when I got to my teenage years, I started really being interested in playing guitar. And my dad bought me from some want ad a used Stratocaster.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I still have. It was from the '60s, and I still have it to this day. It's still my main guitar. It's a great guitar, and I used it on the Tall Stories tour. As a matter of fact, it was one of the guitars on that tour. Anyway, so I took lessons from this amazing jazz guitar teacher named Harry Leahy, who's a bit of a legend in that world, but I was always a rock kid, all right? And I went off, I decided I wanted to go to college and pursue it further, and I chose the University of Miami. They had a really good contemporary music program.
Not to mention party scene.
And some nice beaches as well. But no, I did take that pretty seriously. And again, that was a jazz sort of based education, but it was also they did a really good job of giving you a thorough sort of contemporary music set of tools. So when I got out of there, I kind of lost interest in jazz and went back to playing rock and roll. It was really I just love playing big old nasty A chords through a Marshall amp.
Would you listen to the radio and all of a sudden start to play air guitar as a little boy?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So who were you playing air guitar to?
I was here. There's my three earliest influences, and the things that really hit me kind of in the stomach and really awakened my awareness of music were. First and foremost were the Beatles.
Right.
All right.
It is a very common thing for people to say that they were influenced by the Beatles. And when we talk about being a musician and playing the instrument, like guitar, I've noticed over the years that when it comes to the lead guitarist, for some reason, nobody ever goes George Harrison as one of their top five.
Well, he was my favorite.
Exactly.
Yeah. He was my favorite. I had an older cousin. He was actually my mom's cousin, who was a Vietnam vet. And when he came back, he played me. He said, "You need to listen to this guy." And he played me.
Hold on, Jimi Hendrix?
No,
it
was actually Eric Clapton. It was the Cream.
Cream. Okay. Yeah.
And I remember hearing the solo for Crossroads, and I was just like, I need to be able to play that.
And that was a Robert Johnson tune, right?
It was. Yeah. It was a Robert Johnson tune. But they, when the Robert Johnson recordings finally came out, which I don't think they came out till the late '80s or early '90s, where they were dug up and there was that box set. You could see how Clapton and Jack Bruce had really twisted his songs around to be something completely different. So Clapton, when I heard Hendrix, I was blown out of the water. I had no idea what that was, and that was incredible stuff. But the guy that really struck me as an artist was Jimmy Page, and that was the guy that I always wanted to be.
Well, he's a fascinating guitar player because there's a lot of things that he did that people don't realize they did before Led Zeppelin.
Sure, yeah.
For instance, I found this out when I had Petula Clark here. Did you know that he played the guitar on Downtown?
I did not know
And they're
that.
best friends.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just wild, some of the stories that you'll hear by accident or serendipity. So you take these masters. You have Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
How does that make Jack?
Well, what interestingly, from the mid '80s, I got one of the what they call now they're ancient, those Tascam Porta Studios.
Oh yes,
the 4-track, and this was a huge innovation because prior to that there was no home recording. The guys before, the generations before that, if you wanted to record your band, you had to raise the money and find a recording studio, and now you could do it at home. Of course, now everyone's got GarageBand, everyone's got Pro Tools.
I'll get a home studio.
Yeah,
hey,
sure.
hearing that.
Yeah, but that's a whole nother thing that we could talk about, the benefits and the
pros and cons.
the pros, the cons of what it's done to, I think, music in general. But we digress. So I got a Porta Studio, and I learned how to record. I did it on my own, just did it by, well, that sounds good, well, that doesn't sound good, and I learned how to set levels and where mics sounded best and how the amp sounded good, if I put them, when I turned it up to the right place. And back then there was no internet, there was no way to know. You had to form your own set of tools. So by doing that, I became, I started going down that Jimmy Page road of crafting music within the studio. And that's Jimmy Page's brilliance, is he sees the guitar not necessarily, he's a great lead guitarist, but he sees guitar as an orchestral instrument. When you drop the needle on a record, before now you can go on YouTube and the thing slows stuff down. You can slow it down to half speed and quarter speed right on YouTube without changing the
without
pitch.
the pitch. We have an old reel right here. See,
right,
quarter inch.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you used to have to, if you used to have to drop the needle and try to figure out, how to play this stuff, and no one played it right. If you went to the town, if I figured out the Rain song in South Plainfield, New Jersey, if I went over to Metuchen, 2 towns away,
you get a different interpretation.
Some other guy figured it out completely differently.
Because while he was recording Jimmy Page, it goes back to how he was messing with the pitch to slow things up, which sped up the vocals when he went back.
There was that. Right. That was one of the tricks that he used, but he also would put some guitars in open tunings and then double other parts and put little secondary parts, and there were 10 guitars to make one guitar part.
That is just totally awesome, right?
And that was the thing of when I finally started learning what Jimmy Page was doing, and that's how he got these amazing sounding records, or part of why. There's a lot of reasons why.
He was also open to copying other people's ideas and taking it one step further.
Oh, for sure.
The bow on Daisy Confused, he gets that from the guitarist of The Creation, a band that he saw playing
I didn't know
in
that.
England. Yeah, I forget the guy's name. I think his name is Mark, but I can't remember. So he gets that idea and he utilizes it. Here's these old blues tunes. He goes, wow, here's what I can do with this. That's why it was heavy. They made those blues into like ultimate rock and roll with that boom, big wall.
And I got, actually as a kid, I got to see them a couple of times, and man, they were gods.
Okay,
man.
what are you doing now?
Okay, good question. So, and thank you for asking.
Well, I could talk Led Zeppelin and this stuff all day long.
I know. I still love that stuff.
Yeah, me too.
And I still believe, as we look back at that era of music, it's kind of an anomaly now, and the amount of unbelievable music that came out from, let's say, 1955 through the mid 90s, I want to say.
Okay.
Certainly through the 80s. I mean, you could even make a case through 55 to 75, but there was a lot of good stuff. You still had Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Stevie Ray Vaughan was, yeah. I agree. I think you got 2 generations of rock that are standing out above all others.
But, that was a spectacular period. A lot of it has to do with, there's all kinds of, I guess, socio-political things. There's that post-World War II generation that came out of England, that they were all, broken on the dole, and that allowed them to learn their craft. And there was new, electric guitars that came out, and the BBC was playing these old blues artists that
That's right.
influenced these kids, and
Well, I mean, you had the crossover of technology and innovation and
multi-track
right.
recording.
And as
well.
a disc jockey, over the years, I would hear the difference. I'm like, I can't play this from 1997. From 1967, right next to something from 1989.
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses, Jimmy. The recording difference was so blaringly different.
Yeah,
but now they've actually remastered all of it. Let's talk about what you're up to today.
Okay, sure. So after, as you know, I was in a band called Tall Stories, and we had a nice little run in the 90s. And after that, I partnered up with a couple of different people and realized that I was kind of getting tired of rolling the music industry dice. So I had an opportunity to start to do recording sessions as a freelance recording guy. I did a bunch of that things, playing on other people's records, playing on, I wound up doing a lot of jingles, a lot of advertising stuff, music for TV. I wrote a lot of music for television for a while. And then about 15 years ago, maybe a little more, a friend of mine, I was friends with, I know who it was. It was my friend, you guys know the Conti brothers, who were in a band called Company of Wolves. So we're all really good buddies, and we go way back.
So you're from the same musical tree.
Same part of the world. We grew up, and we all moved to the city at the same time. So John Conti, who's the bass player, his girlfriend back then was a Broadway dancer, and she said, "Why don't you play on Broadway? You should play on Broadway." And I'm like, "I don't want to play on Broadway." "No, I'm telling you, it's great, and you could. So I started playing for some Broadway shows, and as far as a job, it's very different than standing on the stage. You're in the pit, you're in the basement, but from a craft sensibility, it's a challenge. You're basically playing in an orchestra, and I could use my skills. I come from a little bit of a different place than a lot of the people who traditionally do Broadway shows. And now there's a lot of more rock and roll based shows, and I've been able to work on those. And so I've done a bunch of Broadway shows over the past few years. I'm still a guy for hire. I do a lot of sort of artistic music. It's a silly word, but I guess for lack of a better word, I work a lot with, through this same person, I started meeting more dancers, and I make music and write music for contemporary dancers, which is also very different than playing rock and roll, but it's really fun and really inspiring. And as a result of that, in order to make that really from a very organic sense, I had to be able to make the music bigger. And so I started using a looping pedal, which in short, if you don't know what a looper is, it's basically a pedal that sits on the floor that you can record in live in real time. I can record a little piece of music and hit a button again, and it plays the music back continually. It loops it.
Right, so you can theoretically be a one-man band.
Yeah.
With enough loopers.
Right. And so as a result of that, over the last handful of years that I've been working with these people, I do a lot of improvising. Just basically coming up with ideas for them. And I've developed a bunch of ideas for instrumental pieces that utilize the looping pedal. And when I play for the dancers, I've been using a baritone guitar, which is tuned lower than a regular guitar. It's not as low as a bass. You can still play chords on it. You play it like a guitar, but it's tuned lower. So it's almost like a cello kind of a sound. All right. And so between the looper and the baritone guitar, I developed all of these pieces, and I'm currently in the process of completing a bunch and writing some more and putting together a body of work just for that setup as a solo artist using baritone guitar and a looping pedal. So
I like that.
Yeah.
If someone wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
I have a website, jackmorer.com. That's probably the easiest way. Or
But better spell it.
yeah, JACKMORER.com. But you can also Just Google balletguitar.com.
Okay, I never knew that.
Yeah.
So how did you come up with balletguitar.com?
Because I play guitar for
the ballet.
these modern ballet dancers, and
That's really, I don't know anybody else that does that.
that was how it started. It was really just on a whim, and it turned into this. People were very receptive to it. It turned into this thing where I work with dancers up at the Alvin Ailey School and the Alvin Ailey what's the word I'm looking for? Community, and a few other places like that, and it's really fun. I get to work with some really talented people, so yeah, it's very inspiring.
Thank you for coming by today.
Indeed, thanks for having me.
Zach Martin.